There's the next heavyweight champion in the world.
Mike Tyson has gone on trial accused of rape.
Oh, I wanted to hit him in the nose one more time for that bone could have went up in his brain. I wanted to go up in his brain.
That was one of the greatest heavyweights ever.
And I refuse to be beat. There's no way.
Too black, too strong. Too black, too strong.
In a matter of hours, Mike Tyson faces Lennox Lewis in Memphis, Tennessee, in a bid to reclaim the World Heavyweight Championship.
Terminator!
Heavyweight there was. He won a lot of his fights purely on fear.
Fight. And he's down again.
I remember when I first got with him, he said, "Coach, 1 minute I had a gun to a guy's head, the next minute they had my hand up in the air." Go figure.
This is like a chance for a Cinderella comeback. Can Rocky be a rapist?
As a child, Mike Tyson hardly knew his father. The youngest of 3 children, he was brought up by his mother on the tough streets of Brownsville in Brooklyn.
Brownsville, one of the 2 or 3 worst, most decrepit neighborhoods in New York City. I would say 9 times out of 10, a young man's fate is sealed when he grows up in that kind of environment.
Mike had a lisp as a kid. He still has the lisp. He had that's the incongruity with Mike. He has that soft, lispy manner of speaking. So he was a victim as a kid. He hadn't grown yet. They used to call him Little Fairy Boy. He was victimized until he learned to become the victimizer.
Tyson escaped the brutal realities of Brownsville on the rooftops, where he raised pigeons. But his feathered friends also led to a change in the hulking teenager, and the early evidence was you wouldn't like him when he's angry.
He found that somebody had broken into his pigeon coop and wrung the neck of some of his pigeons. He was about 12, I think, at the time. And of course he was infuriated. Anyway, he discovered who it was. He was a kid of about 16. He found him and he battered him. And I saw his eyes as he was telling me the story. And there and then, I formed the impression that he was a psychopath.
I think Brownsville is still in his soul and in his head, and the violence and the predatory experiences he had there have shaped him. He'll never leave Brownsville in a way.
Street crime became a way of life for the young Tyson.
So I said, "What'd you do when you were a street criminal?" And he said, "Oh, I would stand outside the supermarket in Brownsville and I would smile at the old ladies and say, 'Those packages look heavy, can I carry them back to the projects for you?' And as soon as I got them alone in the elevator, I would knock their teeth out and steal their pocketbooks." And he said, "Boxing is just like mugging. It's based on deceit."
Boxing saved Mike Tyson, at least temporarily, no doubt about it. And he was smart enough at that young age to realize that Brooklyn was a dead end.
Before he was 12, Tyson had been arrested 30 times. He ended up in a New York correction center, but a better life lay ahead in Catskill, a leafy suburb of the city. There Tyson met legendary boxing trainer and manager Cus D'Amato, who had already produced 2 world champions, including another Brooklyn bad boy, Floyd Patterson.
I was running a gym in Catskill with Cus D'Amato. I was doing the training Cus oversaw. everything. Bobby Stewart, the correctional officer in the facility where Tyson was a former pro fighter. And he called us up and said, I have this kid who likes boxing. Would you take a look at him?
I told Cus, I said, hey, Cus, you better check his age. He may be lying about his age because Mike looked bigger and older than the guys that were in where I was working. So I said, he may be lying about his age. I can't believe he's 13 years old.
They put the giant teenager in with a 27-year-old former pro. Tyson held his own.
So after the second round, Mike had gotten like a little bloody nose. So Cus said, I seen enough, that's enough. And so Mike said, no. We always go 3 rounds. So they went the third round, but he finished the round, and it wasn't like, he didn't hurt, he just was hitting him, and Mike just kept taking it. So after that, Cus said, there's the next heavyweight champion of the world, if he has the interest.
He's a good fighter, too.
Who?
Mike.
You think so? Why do you think he's a good fighter?
Looks like he can knock down anybody.
Well, that's a very good reason, isn't it?
Well, Cus D'Amato definitely became a father figure to Mike Tyson. Some people liken it more to almost like a Svengali figure.
Your mind is not on your work. There's something distracting you.
Well, Mike Tyson as a person back in those days, he was very, very fractured. There was a lot of damage done already.
Just relax. Relax.
Yeah, but just relax. Just relax.
I'm when we first started.
He was very insecure, which you could understand where he came from, very unsure of himself. He didn't think much of himself. He had never been connected with anything positive in his life.
But it's not quite the Cus and the Kid fairy tale that some people have made it out to be. I think Tyson did do some awful things when he was with Cus and Cus was alive that were covered up.
Mike Tyson understood that being thought of as a prospect, he just knew that there was going to be more allowance, and there was more allowance for his doing certain things than maybe for somebody else. And he started testing those barriers, and he started pushing them more and more. And unfortunately, I think he was allowed to push too much, and there wasn't enough pulling back.
It eventually came to a head when Mike, who was a behavioral problem, put his hands on a young girl and made sexual overtures to her. And this young girl happened to be a relative of Teddy's. Teddy got a gun. He got a handgun, and he went out looking for Tyson. And he found Mike down at the gym, and the gym was empty. It's a small gym over the police station in Catskill. And Teddy confronted Mike, and he confronted him with the gun, and he put the gun to Mike's head.
But Tyson ran to Cus D'Amato and said, Teddy Atlas tried to kill me. And Cus had a need for Tyson. Teddy wanted Tyson shown there are limits to what you can do with women, held accountable for his actions, and Cus just couldn't do it.
And it actually got to the point where Cus went against me, which, was, I didn't understand at that time. I understand it now. I didn't have the pressures Cus had of having been older at an age where he had already had world champions and he wanted to have one more.
I'm sure that early on, for years, it was very difficult for Cus to deal with Mike. Mike was a kid from Brooklyn, very bad, very surly, a thug, perhaps even almost a killer. But Cus knew that if I just push hard enough to get Mike to learn something, but not push him away, I'll succeed and Mike will be better off for it. He'll succeed himself.
In 1985, Mike Tyson turned professional. Guided by his mentor, Cus D'Amato, he was soon the hottest property in boxing.
So here comes this guy who's a pure fighter, respectful of everything about boxing, sensational. Within 5 fights, here's the future of the division. So everyone was hungry. Everyone was ravenous for Mike Tyson to succeed.
It was hot before the guard even stepped in the ring. Once he stepped in the ring, he took care of the hype because he took care of the fighters.
When Mike Tyson began his pro career, he was fighting every 2 weeks. So there's very little time for him to spend away from Catskill.
He was 18 years old, 19 years old. They were building his early professional career. They wanted him active as much as possible. The other reason they wanted him active and in the gym, either training all the time or going into the ring to fight, was that I think that they knew that that was one of the main ways they could keep him from getting into trouble constantly.
When he was young, he definitely enjoyed the thrill of the knockout. The famous quote about driving Jesse Ferguson's nose bone into his brain.
Oh, I wanted to hit him in the nose one more time for that bone could have went up in his brain. I wanted to go up in his brain. Because I always thought about that punch. I always listen to the doctors on television, and that's my friends, and they say when the nose goes in the brain, the consequences of him getting up right away is out of the question.
Here's this kid, still a kid, who had suffered so much and had felt so much emotional pain in his life growing up, in his formative years. Maybe this was payback time. You know, maybe now he was the one inflicting the pain instead of feeling it. Maybe that made him feel good.
Cut to the body by Tyson. Again, a double right hand to the body.
When the fights became longer and longer in between, he would stay in New York City for 2 or 3 weeks. He had the couch, I had the bedroom. Most of the time, I wouldn't even see him. He'd be out all night, having a great time. The next morning, I come out, and there on my couch is my friend, a young fighter, Mike Tyson. As the months went by, I would come out of my bedroom, and there on the couch is a heavyweight contender, my friend, Mike Tyson. Months later, I'd come out to the couch, and there is sleeping the #1 contender in the world. And very soon, I come out, the heavyweight champion of the world is sleeping on my couch.
Another big right hand, and Burbick is in trouble again. Tyson's punches even sound different than most heavyweights. That was a right to the body and an uppercut to the head, and Burbick is down. This one is going to be over, I believe. Have a new era.
Tyson had fulfilled Cus D'Amato's prophecy, but his father figure hadn't been there to see Mike become world champion. He had died the previous year.
Before Cus D'Amato died, Mike was with him. They walked together, they tripped together. They were together all the time. Mike was a creature developed, created almost by Cus D'Amato at that time. Well, Cus said he'd be the youngest heavyweight champion in the world. That was Cus's doing. And he became the youngest heavyweight champion of all time.
Cus always taught in that abstract way that, you know, someday I'm not going to be here, but if you follow the rules, you know, have the discipline to do the right thing, you'll be okay. Boy comes to me with a spark of interest. I feed the spark, it becomes a flame. I feed the flame, it becomes a fire. I feed the fire, it becomes a roaring blaze. And that's the facts. And that's true. And he did it. He did it with Patterson, he did it with Jose Torres, and he did it with Tyson.
The death of Cus D'Amato had a profound effect on him because Cus was such a mentor, father figure. You know, I know that Mike was devastated when D'Amato died.
With D'Amato gone, Tyson's affairs were now looked after by business manager Bill Caton and the new champion's closest advisor Jimmy Jacobs, but there was more pain to come.
Like so many great fighters who are fatherless products of the slums, Mike was that way too, and he did, I think, see Cus as his father, and then he saw Jimmy Jacobs as his father. And I think a lot of the tragedy that his life became results from the fact he lost 2 father substitutes within 3 years. Cus dies in November of 1985, when Mike is 18, and then Jimmy Jacobs, who he really had a close relationship with, dies in March of 1988.
But Jacobs did live to see Tyson unify the heavyweight title. He was crowned undisputed world champion.
Tiger Woods was sucking his thumb. Tyson was huge.
The two champs together. Diet Pepsi's won the title. In head-to-head taste tests, Diet Pepsi challenged and decisively beat Diet Coke.
Mike, how do you feel about sharing your title, huh?
No problem. Just not sharing my Diet Pepsi.
But with Cuz D'Amato and Jimmy Jacobs gone, things were about to start going wrong for Iron Mike.
Mike Tyson was going to become what he became, whatever that is. Whether Jimmy were alive, whether Cus were alive, you can't take the steps he took in his professional life and ultimately his personal life and not change.
There was an incident up at in the Albany area at a big shopping mall there where Mike sort of went nuts and broke up a clothing store, tossing things around.
He was going to do his own thing. He was going to go his own way. And I just don't believe that had Jimmy or Cus stayed alive, it would have made a difference at all in terms of the paths Mike took outside the ring.
Boxing always has its share of female followers. How do you keep yourself pure?
I'm not pure.
I think women have always been Mike Tyson's Achilles heel. Mike was having trouble with girls early on as a teenager. Mike didn't have a good self-image. Mike thought he was ugly. I mean, he lamented once to Cus D'Amato that he didn't think, any girl would ever like him.
Now, every woman who called the apartment when Mike wasn't there, I would get the calls and they'd ask for Mike, and I'm sorry he's not here, and they would say, Steve, I think Mike really loves me. And I would say, why do you think so? Well, he sent me flowers in a pocketbook today because I was with him a couple of nights ago and he just wanted to say thank you for a wonderful evening. Now, I knew Mike knew how to handle women superbly well. He treated each one like a gem.
Mike had a lot of trouble relating with women. He got himself into trouble putting his hands on women. Obviously had a very tumultuous marriage with Robin Givens where he was accused by her, by others, of putting his hands on her, of hurting her.
News that Tyson married Givens last February surprised all but his closest allies.
When Tyson married actress Robin Givens, his personal life became front-page news. There were claims that she had suffered a miscarriage and statements from Givens herself that Tyson's inability to control his temper frightened her. A power struggle developed, with Givens and her mother Ruth Roper on one side and manager Bill Caton on the other.
After the marriage, she called me and said, I'm Mrs. Mike Tyson, I'm taking over. And I said, no, you're not, and I hung up. And I called Mike, and I said, Mike, what's this nonsense? He says, I'll talk to her.
I never want my husband to be in a position to have to fight another fight. I want him to step into the ring as often as he wants because he wants to, because he enjoys it, never for financial reasons.
I think it was showed a total lack of regard and understanding and respect for Michael to suggest that Robin would only love Michael for money.
Ruth Roper and Robin Givens were ambitious, optimistic, opportunistic, and they saw Mike Tyson as an entree into a bigger world. Mike, relatively inexperienced guy with women, relatively inexperienced guy with relationships, fell in love with her.
The important thing is, what was the effect of Robin on Mike's life? The turmoil that ensued, all of the anger that Mike started to show, to not only to Robin, to us, to the press, throwing cameras at cameramen, comporting himself in a completely different way than he had for the last 3 years. Why? Had nothing to do with the fights. If you look at Mike Tyson and the Michael Spinks fight, calm, his personal life. That's where the turmoil was.
In the midst of madness outside the ring, Tyson put on probably his greatest fighting display, disposing of Michael Spinks in 91 seconds.
To describe Tyson's life pre-Spinks fight, post-Spinks fight as slightly mad is the understatement of all time. It's like mixing dice and you pour it out of the cup, and where do the dice go and how do they read? Who knows? To me, the fact that Tyson got out of that period alive, much less still champion, to me it was the first sign that this was a survivor.
A 4:30 a.m. street fight with former opponent Mitch Green left Tyson with a fractured hand.
I pushed him off. He came back at me. He threw a punch at me. I was nervous. I hadn't had a fight, like a street fight, in 7 years, and I was scared, and I was getting paranoid because he was so close. He kept getting close to me. I mean, so I defended myself.
And more damage ensued.
He had that car accident where he was fighting with Robin, and they claim it was a suicide attempt. It was not a suicide attempt. Mike Tyson is not the greatest driver in the world.
Are you okay, Mike? Can you tell us what happened? No, how to hear the person, you know? He's not a private person. Give me a break. The man's obviously not feeling well. Let me give you a segment right here.
I started talking to the doctor. This is in the Hudson Hospital in Hudson, New York. If he had a fight in a week or two, could he fight? So the doctor, before the doctor could give an answer, Robin jumps in my face. That's all you guys care about. You just want him for money. You just want the money. You want the money. And I was getting mad. I looked over at Mike. He went like this, like, what are you gonna say? So then they immediately shipped Mike down to New York, put him in another hospital, and I tried to visit him. My name wasn't on the list.
But I was on a conversation with him one time, talking to him, shortly after he was married. And he was warm and friendly, and then suddenly his voice changes, or someone had stuck a bag around his back. I said, Mike, what happened? Robin walked in. That's the effect she had on him. He was so obsessed with her that he lost all his judgment, all his balance.
The fatal blow to the marriage was probably the joint appearance on an American talk show, where Givens told the world Tyson was a manic depressive, a claim immediately dismissed by his management team. The marriage lasted just a year.
I was fighting with a wife, with managers, with promoters and managers fighting. I was torn between everybody because I wanted to be loyal to everyone. I never had a chance to be loyal to myself.
Tyson has a lot of ugly duckling, self-loathing ideas about himself, and the fact that a beautiful movie star was attracted to him meant a lot to him, because I think this low self-esteem continues throughout his whole life and career, that for all that he has accomplished, he says, I wake up every morning hating myself.
I think that, a lot has happened to me in the last 8 months. I got married, I got pregnant, I lost a baby, I'm losing someone very close to me now.
Do you think it was doomed to fail from the start?
Well, you never think about stuff like that, it's just something that happens. People go through marriage, I doubt, some people go through 6 or 7 marriages. Look at your guy, Richard Burton, he went in and out. These things happen. I might get married 10 more times before I find somebody right. Because I look back and I see, I look at the film, I can look at the Sphinx fight or something, I look at myself and I say, God, I'm at the pinnacle of my career at that particular point. I'm married, 21 years old. That's insane. But you don't think about that. When you're in love, you never use logic, never. I never feel that feeling no more, that like, you're sick or headache feeling. I don't feel that feeling no more.
Are you still in touch with Robin?
No.
How about a mother?
I move on, man. I go on, man.
But this wasn't the end of behind-the-scenes turmoil for Tyson. He was about to sever his 2 remaining links with the D'Amato years, Bill Caton and trainer Kevin Rooney. Promoter Don King was now overseeing Tyson's career, and when Tyson faced Frank Bruno in 1989, Rooney was no longer in his corner.
And Mike didn't show loyalty. Mike didn't say, no. Kevin's my man. Kevin, we've been together since 1980. He didn't do that.
I will say this about King. Don King, in my judgment, may be one of the greatest promoters of all time, and he's quite extraordinary. But he's a bad guy. They took him right on.
My observation is that Mike has never really been happy after the Robin Givens, Don King sequence.
When Mike eventually got rid of Kevin Rooney and Bill Caton, you could set your clock to Mike Tyson's destruction.
In the Bruno fight, he was a fraction of what he had been. He was hit punches by Bruno and all. Became a competitive fight, whereas the Mike Tyson of prior to that, it would not have been competitive. Mike had improved to the point where Bruno would not have been nearly as able an opponent.
What everybody remembers is that Mike Tyson was the youngest man ever to win the heavyweight championship. What no one remembers is that Mike Tyson was the youngest man ever to lose the heavyweight championship. That too is part of the story of Mike Tyson.
In 1990, Mike Tyson fought James Buster Douglas in Tokyo, Japan. On paper, it seemed a run-of-the-mill defense of his undisputed world heavyweight crown.
Don't believe the hype.
The Buster Douglas fight was inarguably the greatest upset in boxing history.
I think it was the biggest upset in the history of sports, not just boxing.
42-1 underdog. Only one Las Vegas casino even offers action on the fight.
Everyone thought this kid was invincible. You know, this was a kid from the back streets of New York. He'd been to hell and back again, and no one could live with him. But, you know, the myth was exposed by Buster Douglas.
Oh, an uppercut got through that time by Buster.
As soon as Mike walked into the ring, I said, he's not in shape.
Of course, if I had been his manager, he wouldn't have fought Douglas. This was King's doing, of course. Don King controlled him at that time. Mike, we went there maybe 50 to 100 pounds overweight, I don't know how much. And because of what Cuss had said about how fighters, heavyweights, permit themselves to become gross because they don't have to make weight, he didn't want to come into the ring looking like that. And I believe he starved himself into weakness. It's never been said, I know it to be true.
He lost a Douglas fight because I don't think he cared. Didn't train, overlooked him, and Douglas put on the fight of his career.
Landing these, oh, nice uppercut by Buster Douglas. Look at this. He's knocked Mike Tyson down. He's in big trouble. He may not be able to recover. It's up to 7 and 8. He's not gonna make it. Unbelievable. Buster Douglas is the new heavyweight champion of the world.
Tyson had reached the lowest point of his boxing career. 18 months later, after 4 comeback victories, he was on the verge of a title shot against new champion Evander Holyfield. But his personal life was about to plumb new depths.
The former world heavyweight boxing champion Mike Tyson has gone on trial in the United States accused of rape. The alleged victim, an 18-year-old contestant in the Miss Black America competition, claims he attacked her in a hotel bedroom last July. Tyson denies the charges.
The Mike Tyson trial at that time was the O.J. Simpson trial, you know, with all the circus atmosphere to it. A trial of the century. You had almost a Hollywood-like story. You had the famous celebrity. You had the wronged woman.
In July 1991, Desiree Washington accused Tyson of raping her in his Indianapolis hotel suite. In January 1992, he went on trial in one of America's most conservative cities.
I think if Mike Tyson would have been tried in New York City, maybe Chicago, maybe Los Angeles, another city, the verdict would have been completely different.
I know basically I'm innocent. I didn't do nothing to her.
Well, anytime you have a rape allegation, it's he said, she said. According to her, he had this incredible scheme to lurk her up to the hotel room so he could have, this strong sex with her and use her and then throw her away like a rag doll. You know, that's her story. His story is he saw her at the competition. She had the bathing suit on. She was dancing around. She looked great. She had a wonderful figure.
Oh, I'm in a dream day after day. Beautiful women, such an array.
Get her up to the hotel room, have a good time with her, and not see her again. So you had 2 different versions there of what occurred. Now the jury had to make up their mind as to what happened.
He knows what he did to me. I know what he did to me. And I have really nothing else to say to him. I feel nothing.
I've heard him say that he liked to hurt women during sex. I think Tyson has his wires crossed between violence and eroticism, and he gets, and pain and pleasure are somehow screwed up in his head.
No, get off me, please, get off me. And he was like, don't fight me. And the person was a lot stronger than I was, and he just did what he wanted. And I was saying, stop, please, stop. And he just didn't stop. And okay, now who's wrong? Him.
Tyson said that the only thing he did wrong was to not treat her nicely after they had sex. But critics at the trial said that Tyson's defense lawyers did everything wrong, in particular putting their client on the witness stand.
When he testified, he used the F word, and the use of the F word in Indianapolis won't play like it will someplace else. That's just not something you do there. And for him to use it, it kind of cut him down to size. It was like he was maybe this thug with this nasty language.
He was guilty in my mind's eye. I mean, it took a little bit of a turn beyond he said, she said. But it also confirmed other thoughts than that he could have raped her, etc. It was the animalistic aspect of Tyson.
I watched Mike Tyson's face when the verdict was read, and there was absolutely no surprise whatsoever. I think he had reconciled himself to the fact that it was going to happen.
Mike decided the whole world was against him. Mike decided nobody loved him. How much of this was true, how much of it was in his mind, doesn't matter. It's what he believed. And I think that conviction and his subsequent 3.5 years in prison firmed that up in his mind. And I don't think he's ever looked back. He's thought that way ever since.
Tyson was found guilty and ordered to serve 6 years in prison. Good conduct would halve his term.
When Mike went to prison in Indiana, I sent him about 400 letters. And I think I have the record, but you'll have to ask Mike Tyson who sent him the most amount of letters. Most of the letters had pictures of fighters, things to keep his mind off of the drudgery of being inside, but a lot of them said, don't go back to Don King when you get out. Get your own lawyer, get your own accountant, protect yourself. But he was a tough kid. I knew he'd survive. But I was hoping and praying that he would not go back to Don. And unfortunately, he did.
Public enemy number one. Show what you got. Show what you got.
With Don King at his shoulder, Tyson walked free in 1995. While in prison, he had converted to Islam and become a student of literature, reading the works of Mao, Shakespeare, and Hemingway. The world waited to see the effects of his spell behind bars.
This fighter, who was still the most famous fighter in the world, capable of still drawing the biggest crowds and raising the biggest gate, was a convicted rapist. That changed the perception of him. No longer was he a sportsman. No longer was he an athlete. Now Mike Tyson was what I call America's soap opera, if not the world's soap opera.
The drama continued when Tyson fought Evander Holyfield in 1997. A rematch following Holyfield's victory the year before, the fight saw Tyson's most excessive behavior finally spill over into the ring as he bit a chunk out of Holyfield's ear.
That was the wildest thing I ever saw in my life. I mean, I wanted to tell the referee, Mills Lane, hey, Mills, what's going on here? This guy just bit him. He can't fight like that.
Why did you stop? How many times you want him to get bit? There's a goddamn limit to everything, including bites.
In the previous fight, he had been saying that Evander was butting him on purpose and the referee wasn't helping him. And he saw it going in the same direction. So, I was very pissed off at Mike for doing what he did. But after hearing Evander and what he was saying, look, if you paint a rat into a corner, he's going to fight his way out of it any way he possibly can.
I cannot tell why exactly I acted like I did, other than to say when the budding occurred, and I thought I might lose because of a severity of a cut above my eye, I just snapped.
The ear biting was an amazing thing to watch. It's not the first time someone's bitten a fighter in the ring, but it's the first time at that level. But that was shocking to me because it happened in the ring. And Mike had always been the utmost professional in the ring. Yeah, it was the street kid coming out in Mike. It was a way to react that he knew. Unacceptable to everyone else, but to Mike, it made sense.
And my reaction as I watched an ear dribble towards me, or a piece thereof, I thought Mike should be fighting Hannibal Lecter.
To regain his boxing license after the Holyfield ear-biting incident, Tyson had to undergo psychological evaluation.
Mr. Tyson reported that he has experienced feelings of sadness, hopelessness, and helplessness all my life. he reported that he has struggled with thoughts of self-destructive behavior for his entire life. Upon further inquiry, Mr. Tyson recalled that he has very low self-esteem, but the biggest ego in the world.
There's nothing wrong with me. I'm not going to bite anybody's ears. You see that I'm devastated from the fact that this happened, and I'm at your guys' mercy. Please don't torture me any longer, sir.
The biggest stressor seems to be this fear of failure. If there's some way that he feels he's going to fail, that's when it all comes up. And I wonder what he's afraid of going back to. It's a very tragic story. There's a story around self-hate, self-harm, an inability to see oneself as lovable, perhaps. And I think the saddest thing is that it'll probably remain an enigma because he's just more interesting that way, and the people that surround him want to keep him that way.
Tyson got his license back. Following the Holyfield defeat, he had cut all links with Don King and has an ongoing $100 million lawsuit against his former promoter. By the time he came to the UK, Tyson had been convicted for a second time after assaulting 2 motorists. Allowing a convicted rapist to fight in this country caused huge controversy.
This is a completely outrageous decision, totally trivialises major problem of violence in our society, violence to women.
Despite the concerns, British crowds turned out en masse to see Tyson.
The treatment Mike got at the airport was like the arrival of the hottest band or the hottest Hollywood actor.
They're claiming I'm a criminal, but now I wonder how. Some people never know.
He went to Brixton because he wanted to have a walk around Brixton, and of course, word spread. We arrived in Brixton, we had cameras there, and chaos just ensued. The police couldn't handle it, and the only safe place for Mike Tyson, convicted rapist, was the police station. I remember talking to people that night, and you were talking to 18 and 19 and 20-year-old men, and their eyes were buzzed like they'd been up all night on drugs, and they were just, we've seen him, we've touched him, I saw him.
Tommy Brooks had now become Tyson's trainer and was with him in the UK.
It just shot him through the stratosphere, you know, and it made him realize, you know, I really am somebody, you know. I mean, he's known it all along, but when people show you that adulation, you know, that puts a lot of stock in you.
I think he's great, and I don't care because he did the crime, but he did the time still, so.
He's fantastic. It's every time, leave the man alone, yeah? You don't leave the man alone.
People say Mike Tyson's unpopular. You wouldn't have guessed that on that day. I think part of Tyson's attraction is that anti-hero type thing. He's been off the rails for a little while, and with some of the things he's done, I think it would have been interesting to see what sort of reaction Lennox Lewis would have had if he'd walked the streets of Brixton. And I'm not sure he would have caused the sort of fervour and frenzy that Mike Tyson did.
And that's all he talked about for the next few days. Oh man, did you see that? Wow, you know, man, I can't wait to come back over here, man. I get treated like dirt at home, you know.
Listen, the Brits love Jack the Ripper after all these years. Why shouldn't they love Mike Tyson?
In the last 5 years, Tyson has fought barely 20 competitive rounds of boxing, 3 of them in the UK, where he fought Lou Savarese and British hopeful Julius Francis.
On the night of the fight, after the fight, when the fight was finished, I said that him actually hitting me was like being kicked by a mule. I remember the first time I went over, the first time he knocked me down, I was surprised. I was like, how did he do that? And where did the punches come to put me on the floor? He throws punches with such speed and power and accuracy that it's very hard to determine where the punches are coming from, what angle they're coming from. For me, to look at Tyson, we as a society are asking a lot of a man who's had a kind of rough upbringing like he did, to live his life in a goldfish bowl and be sane when everything that he does, no matter what it is, good, bad or indifferent, is scrutinised and picked apart by people that, you know, as far as he's concerned, have got nothing to do with him, nothing to do with his life. So, and I would defy anybody to live that kind of life and come out of it sane at the end.
who is going to win, Mike Tyson or Lennox Lewis. It could be one of the most explosive fights we've ever seen.
If the press conference to announce the fight is anything to go by, he could well be right. That descended into a mass brawl in front of the world's media.
When I saw it all kick off, being a cynical sports writer, I thought, oh no, not another stunt. And then it was quite obvious to me afterwards that very quickly after, it wasn't a stunt. It was for real.
You couldn't have staged it if you tried to stage it any better than it happened. I mean, the promoters, no matter what you want, must have went away rubbing their hands when that happened. Thought, we're on a jackpot here. This is the lottery come up again.
Headlines followed claiming Tyson had bitten Lewis on the leg during the brawl. And when Tyson heard a heckle from among the mass of watching journalists, this happened.
Mike Tyson screaming curses out in the crowd. I don't even know if he's talking
specifically. The incident saw Tyson banned from fighting in Nevada, and the bout was postponed, despite yet another appeal.
Who are your real friends? Do you have friends that you can talk to?
I don't have one friend in my entire life. My experience in life produced the person that I am, and the person that I am, I was never successful with friends.
With Tyson, you don't know what Tyson's going to go in the ring. I mean, they say Tyson is on pills to keep him calm, and they've obviously got to take him off the pills before the fight because he's got to be drug tested. Lennox Lewis may need the Royal Marines in there to help him if Tyson loses his rag.
I'm the most accepted, rogue, and disgusting individual in this world. You know what I mean? Everybody knows who I am. They may shake my hand, but I assure you, they won't let me their daughter or anything because of my reputation that came about over the years.
Can't you be a positive story?
Nah, no way. It can't come across. That's why I won't talk nice to you and talk about fornicating with you and letting you suck my because if I was eloquent with you, you would still look at me as a scumbag. It won't work. You have your perception of me. You elicit your perception of me from the camera, from the news. So I give you what you want and what I am miniaturely.
After being rejected by several other US states, the fight was accepted by the Tennessee Boxing Commission. In a few hours' time, Tyson will finally face Britain's Lennox Lewis in Memphis, and Tyson's approach to the fight is all too familiar.
I want his brain to come in contact with my fist. That's what I want in his brain. I don't want to put any vocal assaults or anything, but I want to put physical assaults. I want to damage his brain. Their eyes haven't seen what I've seen. I'm ordained for this. I've been to Valhalla. I've seen the most vicious and most cruelest and coldest white people in the world. They accept me. He can't stop me. Him.
I don't think anybody, including Mike Tyson, knows who the real Mike Tyson is. I even think he has so many personalities he could get a group discount from the American Psychiatric Association just by lying on the couch.
I think because there is no real Mike Tyson, there are 6 or 8 Mike Tysons. And he has said that himself, that I'm more than one person. And the whole mystery of this fight is, can someone who's an emotional mess still have one great performance? Because he can still punch like a son of a bitch, and he still has astonishing hand speed. And all Tyson has to do is dominate this fight for 1 second.
The thing that he would worry about going into this fight would be, he'd be humiliated if he lost. See, if he's in trouble in the fight, Tyson, I don't know what could happen, what goes through his mind. Nobody can read his mind like that. I would like to think the cornermen can keep him a bit under control, and possibly they can, but he can explode at any second.
I believe that Tyson will win the fight. I do believe that Tyson will win the fight.
And I picture Lennox being cautious for a couple of rounds. As soon as he opens up, I think he'll hurt Mike and take him out.
I think Mike Tyson for 4 rounds, or even 5 rounds, will be very dangerous for Lennox Lewis.
If the fight goes more than 4 or 5 rounds, then I think Lewis will take him apart and knock him out.
But I think in the first 5 rounds, I would have to put my money on Mike Tyson.
Fight the power! Fight the power! Fight the power!
Mike Tyson, bullied child and juvenile delinquent, sporting prodigy and world champion, convicted rapist, and to some, a monster. How will the baddest man on the planet be remembered?
As far as I'm concerned, my own personal opinion, I think he should be considered as one of the greatest heavyweights that ever lived. By society standards, he's gonna get ripped up.
Mike Tyson's legacy is not going to be that of a boxer. It's going to be that of a personality. And the personality will transcend the boxing. Unfortunately for Mike, he will not go down in boxing history, but in popular history.
Everyone wants to see the hero who was a hero become a hero again. And everyone will forget about all the nonsense. If that doesn't happen, if Lennox beats him, well then I think that, you know, he'll be like the tragedy of boxing in the last part of the 20th century.
There's almost two conflicting stories working here. One, that he's going to self-destruct, and two, that he's a survivor. Those two things don't seem to go together, yet the way the story's playing out, they are going together. He's still around, he's still fighting, yet there is very little reason to think that he's not on that same path to self-destruction. If self-destructing is going to prison for 3.5 years, well then he's already done part of that. But what would be the next one? You know, that's scary.
And I think that if Mike doesn't win this fight, Mike is finished, he's through. Because I can't visualize him fighting for $2-3 million. In my opinion, I see with Mike not being able to generate any kind of money, he's going to resort back to what he did in the past. I think that somebody's going to probably provoke him and end up shooting him, or, you know, he's going to end up back locked up or 6 feet under. And I mean, it's unfortunate to have to say that, but it's a reality. And I think that's where my man is headed.
Fight the power!
I just want to be remembered. Just that. I just want to be remembered.